Good morning. It is October 5th, 2023. Doing the New York Times Daily Propaganda Rag. Today's propagandist, David Leonhardt. We're covering America's political turmoil, as well as the race for House Speaker, student debt, and a new class of MacArthur Fellows. Two viable parties. Imagine if you were a foreign leader surveying the political chaos in the United States. It's not political chaos. They're just framing it as chaos. Chaos is when people... that's when things go in any which direction and no one has any idea. We have an idea of what's going to go on here. We're going to have a new election. We're going to have a new House Speaker. It's not chaotic. That's just the way they're framing it because this is a leftist news organization. So trying to paint the right as doing something wrong. Remember, the Democrats are the one that voted for this. So if it's chaos, then it's the fault of the Democrats. All right, so for the first time in history, a party has just fired its own Speaker of the House in the middle of a term. Technically speaking, it was the Democrats mostly that fired him. It was 208 Democrats and then 8 Republicans that voted with the Democrats. So really, it wasn't the party. It was actually the opposition that did that. In the Senate, one of two party leaders who's 81 years old has twice recently frozen in public, unable to speak. Yeah, that McConnell needs to go. I mean, that's absolute. Just like Feinstein, she needed to retire long before she passed away. Nancy Pelosi needs to go. So does Chuck Schumer and a variety of other extremely geriatric people. A Supreme Court justice has allowed wealthy political donors to finance a lavish lifestyle for him and his wife. This is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. And the same justice's wife urged officials to overturn the 2020 election result based on truth because Donald Trump is the actual winner of the election, and we all know that. A likely nominee in the upcoming presidential election is facing 4 criminal trials and regularly speaks in apocalyptic terms about the country's future. That's because Joe Biden is the second worst president in all of history. So they expect everybody to think that way because this is the worst economy ever. And he's being prosecuted politically on specious grounds, which we all know that. So again, more framing here. The nominee is essentially tied in the polls with an 80-year-old president who many voters worry is too old to serve a second term. He's not essentially tied. He's leading. See, the Times lies. Propaganda, pure through and through. If you were an ally of the U.S., you'd have to be worried. If you were an enemy, you'd have to be pleased. No, not really. You'd have to be worried because Biden is in office. I can, for sure there, we lost a lot of prestige with Biden. Biden is an absolute laughingstock. To many watching at home and abroad, the American way no longer seems to offer a case study in effective representative democracy. It's because we're not a representative democracy. We are a republic. So we're not a case study in democracy. Instead, it has become an example of disarray and discord. That's a lie. One that rewards extremism. That's a lie. Challenges norms and threatens to divide a polarized country even further. Also lies. Fractured and extreme. Many factors have contributed to the turmoil. Decades of stagnant living standards have caused voter frustration. Yeah, and that's by the Uniparty. Social media, along with the rise of a cable television network willing to promote falsehoods like CNN and MSNBC, I agree, those have caused a lot of problems. Has inflamed discourse. The decline of institutions, churches, labor unions, once dominant local employers, have left Americans feeling unmoored, and aging political leaders have failed to groom strong successors. Don't worry, the Democrats are doing lots of grooming. But the single largest source of chaos is the Democratic Party. I don't say that lightly. I mean, it's the truth. They caused riots for 9 straight months. They are the party of intolerance, bigotry, and hatred. Readers of this newsletter know that I, being the propagandist, think there's plenty of evidence that the Democratic Party also has problems. That's not true. He doesn't present it often. Remember, they rioted for 9 straight months and have created nothing but chaos and disarray. He's the second, their guy is the second worst president in history behind James Buchanan, who started the Civil War. So I wouldn't say he's doing a good job there. It has struggled in recent years to come up with effective policies on corona school closures, illegal immigration, and other issues. Well, corona wasn't an issue, and illegal immigration, they have an open border, so that's their fault. Many working class voters consider the party to be disdainful of them because it is, which helps explain why his longtime troubles with white voters have recently spread to voters of color. Yeah, actually, what it is that the voters of color are starting to realize Democrats are racist as hell and hate them. And so they're starting to leave. Still, every major political party has weaknesses. Despite theirs, the Democrats remain a functional party by almost any standard. Yeah. Their moderate and progressive factions frequently work together. That's because they're collective. President Biden, like Barack Obama before him, has passed a long list of No, he hasn't passed a long list of substantive legislation. He's passed a bunch of legislation that caused inflation to skyrocket. We have the worst inflation ever and the worst economy ever. Layoffs are coming like crazy, and they're pretending that it's not. But yeah, that's hilarious. The Republican Party, by contrast, is both fractured and increasingly extreme. That's describing the Democrats, who now support abortion up until birth and wanton illegal immigration. That's extreme. Tens of millions of Republican voters have embraced beliefs that are simply wrong. That Obama was born in Kenya. I mean, nobody's talking about that at all. That Donald Trump was cheated out of re-election. That's true. I mean, he was, and we know that. They, even without any, looking at all the anomalies and everything, we know from the Time magazine and their cabal of interests that helped to cheat to steal the election did so. We also know that the FBI lied, and so did 51 former intelligence agency officials claiming that Hunter Biden's laptop was fake, when we know it was real, and we know that would have altered the outcome of the election. So Obama, this is Obama's third term, and Trump was cheated out of the presidency. No matter what metric you're going to use, they admit that they cheated. Let's see. All right. That corona vaccines don't work. Well, what's the efficacy of them? It's gone from being, they said it was 100%. Now you have to have multiple boosters. That human beings aren't causing climate change. They're not. And climate change is not really a thing. So that's an extreme version of the Democrats. They believe that everything is, climate change. Everything is a crisis. Everything is give the government more power. That's the Democrats' point of view, is everything's a problem. Give us more power and we'll solve it. A crowd of Republican-aligned protesters, mostly peacefully, assembled at the Capitol in 2021, assaulting police officers. No deaths were caused by the protesters. That's a flat-out lie. There were 4 people that died on January 6th. All 4 died of police action. One of them, Ashley Babbitt, was shot. She was an unarmed woman that presented no threat. One of them was Roseanne Boyle. She was beaten to death, an unarmed woman that presented no threat. The other 2 died of heart conditions right after ordnance from the police exploded near them. So that's a flat-out lie. This is pure propaganda. Prominent Republican politicians, including Trump, have spoken positively about that attack. It's because it wasn't really an attack. It was a guided tour. And more generally about political violence. You mean the political violence for 9 months straight when the Democrats rioted and on May 29th attempted to murder the president? Yeah. Blatant hypocrisy. Kevin McCarthy's downfall as Speaker is the latest sign of the party's drift towards radicalism. Not really. Radical would be what the Democrats are doing, going to the extremes. The Republicans really aren't going to the extremes. Not wanting your country to fall apart is not extreme. Not wanting to have massive debt is not extreme. Those are not extreme things. Not wanting to do a bunch of extreme climate change crap where they just flat out lie to you and say that the gas that plants breathe is bad, that's not extreme. He lost his jobs because a group of hard-right House members were furious with him for conducting policy negotiations that are inherent to democratic governance. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. And you don't have to go to the opposition and beg them to help you out. You do what's right based on your own party, which McCarthy did not do. He worked with the Uniparty, which proves that there's massive corruption, and Gates and some others stood up to it. So this is hilarious. The Times is calling the Uniparty, standing up to the Uniparty is extreme because the Times is part of the Uniparty. Remember, they're defending McCarthy right now. Let's see. The ouster captures the degraded state of the Republican Party in this era of rage, wrote the Wall Street Journal's editorial board, a reliable voice of conservatism. So the Republican in this era of rage, what era of rage? You mean the Democrats' rage, where they complain about everything and blame every problem in the world on Republicans? Yeah, that would be rage. Fake rage. The greatest challenge. When my colleagues and I asked democracy experts, we live in a republic, so who cares what democracy experts believe? That's a dumb phrase. This week, how to make sense of the country's political turmoil, they emphasized that the central explanation was the Republican Party. The democratic system, we live in a republic, so we don't need to have that. It doesn't need 2 viable parties. That is a flat-out lie. And this is great. I love this. The democratic system, which we don't have, we live in a republic, needs 2 viable parties. Sarah Binder, a political scientist at George Washington University. What did Washington say? Not to have a party system, specifically a 2-party system. It's hilarious. She is a disgrace. You need a set of leaders on both sides that have the confidence of their followers and have some understanding of the rules of the road. No, that's what you have in a duopoly. In my lifetime, this is the greatest challenge that I've seen coming at us, said Joseph Ellis, a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian. No, it's not. The greatest challenge that we have is the fact that we have runaway inflation. We have illegal immigrants flooding across in an invasion of military-aged men coming across the border. We have the job markets are stagnating, layoffs are going en masse, and the government is flat out lying and saying that this is a good economy. Those are our problems. Danielle Ziblatt, a co-author of the recent book Tyranny of the Minority, which is that's the Democrats. They are the minority, extreme minority, and they are tyrannical in nature, told me that the structure of American political system was partly to blame. The Electoral College, the Senate, and gerrymandering have allowed Democrats to wield power without appealing to most Americans. Democrats are not popular at all. They're only popular in the small enclaves of the big cities. Everywhere else, they're not popular. Those are just flat out lies. Our Constitution in this way is one of several factors radicalizing the Republican Party, leading it to turn away from democracy itself. We are a republic, not a democracy, so that's actually the extreme end of the leftists trying to move the Overton window to make us a democracy that we're not. I think the country's political class is aging and underperforming in many ways. I'm a longtime critic of gentotocracy, but that's a second-order problem. Benjamin Nine of the Dartmouth College says the first-order problem is by far the state of the GOP and the electoral rules and institutions that make the threat it poses so significant. Notice they haven't listed out any threats of the GOP. It's just existence. They don't want the GOP to exist because the Democrats can only win through cheating and coercion and lies. Without those things, in a free and fair contest, Democrats lose 9 out of 10 times. Only the most deranged people will vote for Democrats. They're openly racist, bigoted, and want to destroy our country. And remember, I don't even like Republicans. I'm an independent. I hate both parties. Even with all these problems, there are reasons for optimism. The Republican caucus in the Senate is more functional than the House. Federal judges and election officials from both parties blocked Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Candidates who endorsed he didn't lie, he told the truth. They didn't fare poorly in the 2022 midterms either. That's also a lie. It's possible that more functional Republican Party committed to both conservatism and we live in a republic. We don't have a democracy. Will emerge in coming years. That's their hope, is that the Republicans will become more democratic because that's what they want, to move the Overton window farther to the left so that we get rid of our republic. But it is not assured. Events of recent weeks have reminded us that the authoritarian threat isn't going away. The authoritarian threat is the Democrats. The Democrats are the far left party. They're the party of authoritarianism. Congress, Representative Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise are running against each other for House Speaker. That should be an interesting fight. Nancy Pelosi was kicked out of her bonus office in the Capitol. The decision was supposedly made by McCarthy, who's expected to move into the office next week. That's a funny way of saying hideaway secret office. That's what it really is there's a whole bunch of secret offices, and they maintain them so that they can have secret backroom deals where people don't get to know who they are. And McCarthy let Pelosi keep hers, which was a break from norms, and he should not have done. So now the way they're framing that's quite interesting. Biden expressed concern that aid to Ukraine could be disrupted by the chaos over the House speakership. Yeah, of course he did, because we're at war. We're protecting Ukraine to cover up for his corruption. Remember, Ukraine is the money laundering capital of the world. That's where Joe Biden's corruption is at. This is to protect Biden. We're going to have World War III to protect a corrupt president. It's hilarious. Steve Bannon's podcast has stoked right-wing anger that unseated McCarthy. So be it. Let's see. More on politics. The Biden administration will forgive additional student debt, this time for teachers, firefighters, and people with disabilities, which is illegal and unconstitutional. They have no right to do this, and it just screws over everyone else, makes inflation worse, and Biden is one of the worst presidents ever. Federal prosecutors are looking at Rudy Giuliani's drinking habits as part of the 2020 election interference case. That has nothing to do with anything. Why would you even bring that up? Ron DeSantis' campaign announced that it had raised $15 million in the past 3 months. Hours later, the Trump campaign said it raised $46 million. DeSantis is wasting so much time. Senator Robert Menendez was accused of receiving $60,000 Mercedes convertible for his partner as a bribe. She damaged her previous car in a crash that killed a man. Interesting. Democrats are above the law, though, so they get to do whatever they want. Commander Biden's 2-year-old German Shepherd is no longer living at the White House after a series of biting incidents involving staff. That just kind of shows you when your dog bites people, it's because you are a bad owner. And Biden is a terrible owner. His dog has bitten like a dozen people. Yeah, it's just shows. Biden is just a bad person all around. Meet the 8-year-old boy in Mongolia who is identified as the latest incarnation of the spiritual leader in Tibetan Buddhism. A teenage girl in Iran is in a coma after she boarded a train with her hair uncovered. The government has released video, but some accuse the country's morality police of hurting her. Kenya is sending police officers to deal with gang violence in Haiti. At home, people accuse the officers of brutality. Zelensky hasn't ruled out the possibility of a presidential election in Ukraine next year. Climate, so some lies here. June, July, August, and September broke heat records. No, they didn't. The 1930s were considerably hotter. All you have to do is go look at the records. There were more 100-degree days in the 1930s than there was now. They're lying. The soaring temperatures are changing Americans' relationship to summer. That's a lie. It's perfectly fine. The summer was not anything out of the ordinary. People who work outside have few legal protections against the heat. That's fine. More people die in cold every year than heat. While fall is off to a late start, chillier air is expected to arrive in much of the U.S. this weekend. No, it's not off to a late start. It's been just fine. I live in Kansas. Labor workers at healthcare provider Kaiser Permanente began a 3-day strike, hoping to call attention to staffing shortages. There's a billionaire class, and then there's the rest of us. Read a profile of Sean Fain, the leader of the striking auto workers. Mayor Eric Adams asked the judge to suspend New York City's obligation to provide housing for thousands of migrants. Oh, but I thought every person is legal. Yeah, of course. Until the problems come to your doorsteps, Democrats have no problem championing illegal immigration as long as it doesn't hurt them. NIMBY is strong in the Democratic Party. A shooting outside Massachusetts Market, critically injured a pregnant woman on a passing bus. Her baby died. That's terrible. In Maryland, Supreme Court is set to hear arguments today in the case of Adam's Side, the subject of this podcast Serial. Why? Adnan, whatever. Americans can be forgiven for turning out Trump, but we should pay attention to his escalating calls for violence. He isn't calling for violence, so that's just a lie. Here are columns by Charles Blow on Trump and McCarthy and the concept of anti-racism. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, anti-racism is just don't be racist. That's it. But what they actually do is lie and create a bunch of things. Anti-racism is itself racist. Let's see. Yeah, this is just fluff. Okay. Dogs have their day. Beloved New York Halloween dog parade was almost canceled and the mayor's office stepped in. The 2030 World Cup will take place across 3 continents as part of the celebration of this tournament's 100th anniversary. So remember, these are all the climate change fanatics. So we're going to have a tournament take place across three continents because that's not bad for the climate, right? Yeah. Saturday Night Live announced it will return for the first time since this writer's strike on October 14th with Pete Davidson as host. So it just kind of shows that Saturday Night Live is crap and has been for a long time. All right, this day in history. Today's highlight on October 5th, 1953, Earl Warren was sworn in as the 14th Chief Justice of the United States, succeeding Fred M. Vinson. In 1892, the Dalton Gang, notorious for its train robberies, was practically wiped out while attempting to rob a pair of banks in Coffeyville, Kansas. In 1947, President Harry S. Truman delivered the first televised White House address as he spoke on the world food crisis. In 1958, racially desegregated Clinton High School in Clinton, Tennessee, was nearly leveled by an early morning bombing. In 1983, Solidarity founder Leah Levin Leach Wansha was named the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. In 1989, a jury in Charlotte, North Carolina, convicted former PTL evangelist Jim Baker of using his television show to defraud followers. Sentenced to 45 years in prison, Baker was freed in December 1944 after serving 4.5 years. Wow. Nice. So, sentenced to 45 years, and he did 10% of it. That's awesome. In 1994, 48 people were found dead in apartment murder-suicide carried out simultaneously by two Swiss village members of a secret religious doomsday cult known as the Order of the Solar Temple. I remember that one. In 2001, tabloid editor Robert Stevens died from inhaled anthrax, the first of a series of anthrax cases in Florida, New Jersey, New York, and Washington, which has still been unsolved. In 2005, defying the White House, senators voted 90-9 to approve an amendment sponsored by Republican Senator John McCain that would prohibit the use of cruel and inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment against anyone in U.S. government custody. In 2011, Steve Jobs, the Apple founder and former chief executive who invented and master-marketed ever sleeker gadgets that transformed everyday technology from personal computer to the iPod and iPhone, died in Palo Alto, California at age 56. He also stole a majority of those innovations, so there is that. In 2015, the United States, Japan, and 10 other nations in Asia and the Americas reached agreement on the landmark Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal, which was an absolute abhorrent thing that caused tremendous inflation, was one of the worst deals ever made. In 2017, Hollywood executive Harvey Weinstein announced that he was taking a leave of absence from his company after a New York Times article detailed decades of alleged sexual harassment against women. He's above the law. In 2018, a jury in Chicago convicted white police officer Jason Von Dyke of second-degree murder in the 2014 shooting of a black teenager, Laquan McDonald. In 2020, President Donald Trump made a dramatic return to the White House after leaving a military hospital where he was receiving an unprecedented level of care for corona. In 2021, a former Facebook employee, data scientist Frances Haugen, told a Senate panel that the company knew its platform spread information and content that harmed children, but that it refused to make changes that could hurt its profits. Well, there we go.